the man of the moment, Mr. Karan Bajaj, founder and CEO, Whitehat Jr., to address the audience with a keynote on entrepreneurship is about going within oneself in resilient times, the art of Uber scaling up. Mr. Bajaj.
Hi.
Good
morning, everybody.
Welcome, and we're very, very excited to hear you. Over to you, sir.
Same here. It's a pleasure to be here. I've known Dr. Batra for some time, and I love how he's creating such an inspiring community. So I'm very happy to be here. And I asked the hosts about what topic I should speak on, and the uniform response was that everybody wanted to know the art of scaling up very fast, because Whitehat Jr., as many people know, started in November 2018 and went through like a tremendous scale-up journey where it's hitting almost $200 million in annual revenue run rate, or more than $200 million in annual revenue run rate within a period of 18 months. And obviously the much talked about Beju's acquisition happened last month as well. So I thought I would share some thoughts on that. Sorry, Krishna, is everything clear?
That's a great scale up within a small duration of time. And I'm sure with the COVID-19, the pandemic, we have been on the lockdown. The lockdown period have actually benefited the project, I guess so. Very well. And over to you, sir, please.
Great. Yeah. No, thank you. And I'll try to share some kind of insights that I've learned from the journey, and hopefully it will be of some use to people. I would start by saying though that all startups are very distinct, and what works in one set will not fully be. Is this better, Kunal? I'm just adjusting my camera. Could you give me some more instruction on how to adjust it? Or okay, great, wonderful. So if I were to kind of summarize the framework that I think is reapplicable here, is that I think of scaling up in actually two components. The first part is extreme patience in building a product. And then the second part is, I would say, extreme impatience in scaling up the business, right? And if either of the two pillars are not very strong, then the journey of scale up would lead to some floundering along the middle, right? So let me kind of throw some lights on it. If I were to think about our own 18-month journey, and I would say that's consistent with everybody, I would say for the first 6 months of the journey, you have to be extremely patient and very artisan-like, very craftsman-like in building a product that actually is a very, very good fit with the consumer, right? So I think in this period, right, which is the 6-month period, the role that the founder has to play, and there are many founders in the room who are listening, the role that the founder has to play is getting to be the single product manager, right? Before they hire anybody from product management, etc. They have to be the single product manager. They have to be the first call center employee. They have to be the first sales employee. They need to know everything about their product inside out. And for a period of like at least 6 months, I would say, they need to be doing everything, right? Because in the act of knowing your customer and your product in extreme detail, you'll be able to create an offering that is going to be extremely valuable to customers, right? So if I look at our own journey, for the first 6 months of the company, there were only about 7 people in the company, right? If I look at the last 12 months, from 7, we went up to 3,000, 4,000 people, from 1 crore a month of revenue. At the end of the 7th month, we went up to, we closed last month at almost 150 crores of revenue on a monthly basis. So we went up 150 times. In every parameter, right, the company scaled up very quickly within a 6 to 12 month period, but that was because the fundamentals of the product were very strong. And that was because in the first 6 months of the company, we were very, very detailed oriented in creating the product, right? So what that means is that you create a product vision with obviously a very small founding team. You go into launching it quickly, getting into every detail of how the customer responds. I remember when I was picking up call center calls, I was just at the end of transitioning out from discovery. I was in my notice period, I would be on one point, we were trying to get Prime Minister Modi onto the Man vs. Wild show, right? I remember I would receive a call from the Prime Minister's office. At the same time, I would receive a call from a customer on the other end of the phone on the weekend about some technical issue which was happening. But I knew I would pick up all of these calls. I would try to debug myself what the technical issue in the live classroom was. And I would fix it till I got to a point where I understood what was happening in the system and was able to build a scalable structure around it, right? So whether that was the call center, the first 100 sales, me and Dr. Farida, who was one of the curriculum creators, we kind of closed the first 100 sales ourselves. We understood what the customer hot buttons were. Post the sales, we would call the customer, spend a lot of time with the customer, either at their home or on the phone, understanding what they liked or did not like about the product. And for the first 6 months, we were very patient in creating this very artisan-like product. And then the moment there are very clear metrics at which you hit that point, right? I think of it as a bit of a 50-50-50 rule, which is that your net promoter score has hit 50. So among the base of, I remember at that time we had 100, 200 customers. On the base of 200, 300 customers, we had hit about a 50 net promoter score, which is an indicator of how likely are the customers or how great the experience is that the customers would recommend you to other customers. So we had hit a 50 net promoter score. You hit a 50% renewal rate, which I think is very critical, that the early set of customers who bought you, at least 50% of them are buying you again, right? I use the 50% number because as you go along the journey and the team gets bigger, you are able to go from 50 to 70, 80% through natural iterations of the product, right? But at least you should have reached a point where the people that you sold to, at least 50% of them want to continue and be a part of the journey again, right? And then I would say you have a somewhat of a 50% plus gross margin, right? Which is for me an indicator of that you've set up a business model in which you have a predictable funnel. You have the ability to spend in marketing through a good unit economic structure in order to get people at the top of the funnel, right? And if you hit like this 50-50-50 mark, right, you have a line of sight to a gross margin of 50%. Your net promoter score is 50%, 50 points, and your renewal rates are 50%. At that time, you're ready to scale, right? And then you should just, when you scale, you should be completely, extraordinarily unapologetic about scaling very hard, right? So when we knew that we had a great product, if you look at it, we were doing about 1 crore of revenue per month then, which was about August of 2019, right? So for the first, from October of 2018 to August of 2019, in this period of iteration and experimentation, we went to 1 crores of revenue, right, per month. If you look at what we went from October to July, every month we doubled, right? We went from 1 to 2 to 4 to 8 to 16 crores to about 150 crores a month. Month on month, we were just doubling. And during that period, there is a lot of chaos in the company, right? The organization kind of expands, the organization structures keeps breaking and resetting. There are fires everywhere, right? Culture goes for a toss, then you fix it. Then again, you've doubled in terms of employees and a business. And then again, the framework and the processes and the systems break. And you have to kind of get tech, product, business, operations, everything should be running well enough. But the power is that if you have a good product because you built it so patiently in the first 6 months, then consumers cut you a lot of slack, right? Because the product is good. And as long as the consumer word of mouth is positive, which it will be if you've spent a lot of time in crafting a great product, then a lot of these things take care of themselves, right? Because consumers tell other consumers, revenue keeps coming in. With revenue coming in, you are able to invest in building the team in order to deal with all the scaling issues that come, right? So when I looked at the last 12 months of the company, right, our capital consumed has actually been nil, right? At the time of the acquisition, we had raised about $11 million of funding. At the time of the acquisition with Bajaj, we had $14 million in the bank. So we had never used any capital at all because since the product was crafted so well, our renewal rates were very high. Customer acquisition costs were very low because people were talking about the product. And that's why our journey to scale was comparatively fast, right? So I think like if I were to summarize, the journey of scaling up for me is a journey of extreme patience in the building and of the product and extreme impatience in scaling the business, right? Because you have a certain point in time, right? So if I look at our category also, coding for kids, although I've never been concerned about competition, I always welcome it because I think it kind of raises the bar for the company that's operating. But given that we scaled so fast, nobody could actually make inroads into the business, right? Because we were so like we had our moment and we were able to kind of leverage the power of the product to kind of scale the business to such a degree that even though very, very well funded, very big competitors tried to enter the space of kids coding because we created the category and it became significant, none of them could make any inroads into the category, right? Because we were like scaling so rapidly, right? So I think that is also very critical, right? That extreme impatience in scaling is also very critical. Otherwise, you leave yourself very vulnerable to a better funded, larger competitor coming, and typically they can't replicate your product experience if you've spent a lot of time with it. But in the short term, there's a lot of category economics destruction that happens with competition coming in, right? They'll spend more money on customer acquisition. They'll kind of like, try to take employees, suppliers, etc. But if you've scaled very rapidly, then even if you're a small company, nobody can actually get a toe into the category, right? So if you're able to kind of get this balance right, I would say success is yours, right? Whether that's 18 months and whether it's 6 and 12, or you structure it as 5 and 13, that's somewhat like very linked to the category. But I think that balance is very good. So I would say, in the interest of time, I think that's what I had to share about the art of scaling up a business. Dr. Batra also asked me to talk a little bit about the personal journey of a founder in terms of like the spiritual practices, etc. I think I could spend I've written an entire book on that, so there's a lot I could talk about that. But I would say the journey of scaling up a company is very, very hard physically, right? Without knowing that Alibaba principle, right? The principle we were working on was what we used to call a 10-10-6, right? Which is we used to work 10 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock in the night for 6 days a week, right? So we kind of followed a 10-10-6 kind of a working model, right? Very hard. Yeah, right. You're working basically 12 hours a day for 6 days a week. Minimum, right? That's just the official times that we used to work. And then we obviously always used to be on Sundays and stuff as well, right? And I would say the physical journey of going through that is very tough. I'm 40 right now, or a little bit more, 41 right now. So when I started the company, I was 39. You're working with young people who still have the pure physical energy to do that. I think for me, what is very underrepresented is in the founder world, which is the physical energy of the founder, right? The energy of the founder will drive the company. If the founder is maniacal about details, that will drive the company forward. And that energy has come a lot from my personal life, right? Like the yoga, the meditation. I would say a very vegetable-based diet. Overall, I would say that's very under-leveraged and not talked about much. But I would say that energy has really helps drive the company, because the founder's energy in the end will drive the company, and the founder's energy in turn will be dependent on what is the personal framework of life that they have that allows them to be so single-minded and so devoted to what they do, right? So yeah, so I think for this point, I would say that would be what I would say. But yeah, it's very exciting. I'm very delighted that there is a room full of entrepreneurs who are embarking or quite established in that journey already. Very, very possible, right? If you have a great product and you're very relentless about scaling, it's not hard to create a couple of $100 million business in 18 months, right? So with that, I'll pause and put the questions for the next 5 minutes. It was a delight speaking to you.
Congratulations, Karan, for being authentic and articulating your journey. This is my second conversation with you. I was still listening to them. And, my takeaway is I'm going to go on a veg diet, because, Indian ethos that, sleep on time, eat vegetarian, because then it does reflect it in your thinking,
Yeah.
It's that energy. There is a science, there is the circadian rhythm that if you sleep between 10 p.m. and 3 a.m., that's the best time to sleep. The quality of sleep is best between that time. Now, coming back to the theme of the conference, is called resilience. So tell us a bit about resilience. You've been very candid about a lot of things, but tell us, when you were in the initial stages of Whitehat Junior, was there self-doubt, and how did you get over that?
It's a great question, Dr. Batra. I would say there are two things, right? So for me, and I'll answer it on a more personal basis. By the time I'd hit Whitehat Junior point, right, I think there were two principles that were falling in my life, right? One is this principle of what I call willful poverty, right, which is in the last, I would say 10, 15 years of working, right, I had taken these very long stretches in the middle where I was living with very less, right? So for example, I was in a yoga ashram for a year, right? For a year where I was just sleeping on the floor for a year of an ashram, right? Where in a dorm room of 60 people, where there was one bathroom for 60, 70 people, right? So what happened as a result of doing these experiences was that I'd learned very early that you need very little to live, right, happily, right? Through whether I was on a sabbatical with my wife, like where I was going from Europe to India by road, we traveled with very little and we lived with very little, right? So I think the kind of the sinking in of this experience that you need very little to be happy is very critical, right? By the time I hit the entrepreneurship journey, there's always a level of self-doubt and stuff that happens, right? But I always knew that, look, even if this whole thing doesn't work out, it's fine, right? At no point of at no point was the self-doubt crippling, right? I always looked at it as like, okay, there is doubt, right? Whether this will work or not.
Contemplation.
Yeah, but it was never crippling self-doubt because I lived through these journeys. So I would highly recommend that this act of willful poverty, right? Building, what happens with people is that they get very comfortable and then they put more and more layers around their life, right? Houses, cars, the right schools for their kids, the right neighborhood, the right apartments, right? The layers keep adding. And breaking those layers often and realizing that the human soul needs very little to kind of be excited, because really the journey of the soul is to fulfill its potential, right? And as long as you're able to do fulfilling of that potential, you're very happy. And I think those are very critical, right? Otherwise, those self-doubts are more about, if it doesn't work, what will happen to me, etc., etc. So that's why I never had those "what will happen to me" kind of questions. Yeah.
Okay, Karan. Last 6 weeks, Karan Bajaj has become an inspirational story. But as you know, that it took many years for it to happen. Apart from resilience, the theme is going with it. You talked about the concept of willful poverty. You also talked about scaling up. How do you scale up? Give us, is there a playbook to scaling up? You did allude to it in your inaugural comment, but is there a playbook now that you have no paucity of capital, you have a long-term plan, and you're looking good in the short term? How does one scale up?
The Uber scale-up journey, as I said, you need to have a good product at the center of it. See, the thing is that if you don't have a good product at the center of it, and you'll start to realize very quickly that the journey breaks, because you can very quickly create a sales engine, but your renewal rates won't come. As a result, you'll realize that the business model gets broken, or your customer acquisition cost becomes very high because people are not talking about the product. In the end, a good product leads to a very good business model, because a good product experience leads to people talking about it, customer acquisition costs going down, renewals filling up to become more than 30 to 40% of your revenue. As a result of that, what happens is that your cost of overall running the business goes down. That's why I keep saying that if the product is very good, right, and the business model has been constructed right from the beginning, the act of Uber scale up actually doesn't require that much funding, right? We went from 1 crore to 150 crores a month of revenue, right? 150 times scaling up in 7 months. And during this time, our bank balance went from 8 million in the bank to 14 million in the bank. So we were able to scale because we weren't reliant on external capital to scale, right? Otherwise, you scale, you stop because you're looking for funding, then you kind of get the funding again, then you scale again, then you stop to look for more funding. That start-stop journey inhibits your growth, right? In our case, a good product led to people talking about that and not having to spend exorbitant money, yeah.
So the customer acquisition monies weren't needed, and you did what a business should do, is to be able to sell the product and have internal accruals to grow the business.
Correct, exactly.
That's what you're saying.
Correct. Yes.
Karan, one more thing is that last 6 months have been very tough for a lot of people, both on the price front and the livelihood front. Now, what is your advice to young entrepreneurs between Facebook, Twitter, the Vertex platform, Business World site, BW Disrupt site? About 2,500 people are tuned in right now. So what's your advice to young entrepreneurs who are seeing tough times, whose revenues have gone down, who are not being able to raise funding? What is your advice to them?
We went through, our industry was different, right? So our industry went through an opposite phase, right? Where there was a lot more kind of interest in the industry overall. So I think for me to put myself in their shoes, beyond, I would say, the generic advice of resilience, what I have seen is that, so if I look at a longer canvas of my life, right, what I have seen is that extreme growth decisions always pay out in the long term. So I think people should just stick, a life is measured in decades, not in days, right? So what happens is, you've lived through my journey as well, right? When I was with Discovery in India, I tried to do a lot there, right? Like same energy that went into the start.
Big. You basically dreamt big. You launched.
Yeah, I dreamt big that time. I did a lot, and most of what I did didn't work then, right? But see, a life is measured in decades, right? So everything that didn't work during that time in Discovery, I kind of learned a lot, applied the same playbook here, and it worked fabulously within 18 months, right? Where in Discovery, I would say I was the most unsuccessful CEO in the Discovery India history, probably because I did a lot and almost 50-80% of that didn't work. So what I've seen overall is that over a longer run, a life is measured in decades, not in days. Days keep going through ups and downs. Decades typically show the output of your choices of dramatic growth. So I think every founder who's chosen this path is very kind of ethically sincere about what they're doing with true first principles, will eventually have a very good life, right? It will always pay out in the long term. And my life has gone through so many ups and downs, right? Like failure, success, failure again, broke, millionaire. I've been through so many of these cycles over the last 20 years that I've seen that money, success always follows growth. If you're choosing dramatic growth, you'll have dramatic outcomes in the times to come. But it won't happen in days, it'll happen in maybe longer periods, decades maybe, right? But it'll happen. Yeah.
Now that you have investments in the company, where is the deployment happening? Is it happening in people? Is it happening in developing new products? Is it happening in exploring new markets? Give us a sense of what are the next 6
new
to 12
products, right? New products and new markets. See, what I've always felt is that's why when we launched in the US, India was a cash flow positive business. That's when we launched in the US. The moment the US became a cash flow positive business, we launched in Australia, New Zealand, and UK. My thesis is that you should not scale until you're able to prove out one business model correctly, right? So right now our investment is completely in scaling to new markets where it takes a while to set the business model in place, and creating new products outside coding, because the coding product in its core markets is actually a cash flow positive, profitable product, right? So in a way, I've always felt that, look, don't premature scale. Have a good product, have a good business model, show its return, cash flow positive, like a positive margin, and then basically scale to other areas and become a multi-threaded company, right? So right now, all of our investment is in new channels, new markets, and new products, right? All the current channels are scaling profitably, actually.
My last question before I let you.
Yeah,
Karan,
of course.
You've been a best-selling author. You're now a very successful entrepreneur, and I'd say for our conference, you're the biggest draw. I must tell you, our jury chair in the evening, we are a Young Entrepreneur of the Year award. We had a very accomplished jury. Rajan specifically asked me, when is Karan speaking? I'd like to attend this session. So it tells the kind of respect and kind of attention you got. But tell me, if we talk to you in 3 months, and while you talk of decades, so on and so forth, but what would have changed about Karan in 3 months, and what would not change about Karan in 3 months?
I think I change a lot, right? So I grow a lot because, I've always said, right, I think of life like a bit of a slot machine, right? Where I've always thought of this principle it's truly like a slot machine for me, right? Where I think that the only gift I owe life every day is my full energy to play the slots, right? I'll just go and 100% from the time I start the day to the end of the day, I'll operate it with full energy, the slot machine with full energy. And sometimes it's going to hit the jackpot, and sometimes it's going to be a complete failure, right? And that's how slots work, right? So in a way, I think of life like that, right? Every day I'm going to do a lot of things with full energy, a lot of decision making. And hey, some decisions are going to pay out and some decisions are not going to pay out, right? And I just owe life my energy every day, right? So that's how I kind of simplify my life. So in that sense, I think what will not change in 3 months is that will not change, right? I mean, there'll be ups and downs as always are, but the slot machine will be paid with full energy. And I think in this journey, you grow and so much.
You'll hit the jackpot again. You hit the jackpot once.
I mean, right. I've hit, as I said, I've hit it, then missed it, then hit it. So I'm kind of now somewhat there is no so I think there's nothing left in me saying that, like, to say that I am like exceptional person or I have any pride at all, because I've learned the opposite way, that when I hit it with full intention also, it sometimes really doesn't work at all. So in that sense, I think that doesn't change. What will change though is, see, I learn a lot every day, right now I'm trying to learn how do you how do you scale to new geographies, and how do you set up local structures in new geographies. I'm trying to learn how to build the culture of a company in this remote environment where you're scaling from 1,000 to 2,000 to 4,000 people month on month. So I'm kind of growing a lot as a business professional. So I think I'll learn a lot about the art of dramatic scaling, right, in a way, and how to create a cultural thesis that allows dramatic scaling globally. So I think I'll learn a lot in the next few months.
Thank you so much, Karan, for talking to us. We wish you luck in your journey, and thank you for inspiring a lot of people. And most importantly, because I've known you for a while, for being so authentic. I can say to the viewers that if you talk to Karan off the screen, he'd be exactly like this. There's no two personalities, So thank you for being so authentic, and we wish you luck, and we wish Whitehat Junior luck, and we have no doubt that for the next 3 years you'll be able to build what you set out to, and possibly better than that. All the best.
Thank you, Dr. Batra. And same, I would echo the sentiments. Thank you for everything you do to so selflessly to inspire folks. Right, I've also been following you for a while, and it's been lovely. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to people.
Yeah, being very humble and kind. Thank you so much. God bless you.
Bye-bye.